Welcome to our podcast. They're all good birds. I'm Karl.
And I'm Melody.
We live in a special little corner of the world near Kachemak Bay in Homer, Alaska.
Karl has owned and operated bay excursions, water taxi, and tours on Kachemak Bay for about 25 years. He specializes in showing birders and other visitors our local birds. In 25 years, he's learned a lot about birds, and he'd like to share that with you.
Melody is my youngest sibling. When we were growing up in Homer, our family had many adventures, including camping, fishing, hiking, and exploring Kachemak Bay. Melody is having fun learning about the local birds.
This is our first podcast about the birds on Kachemak Bay. Today we want to focus on the Black-legged Kittiwake. This is a gull that is really common here in Kachemak Bay. There's several seabird rookeries where they come and breed. Karl, tell us how you would identify a black-legged kittiwake.
Well, the first thing you'd look for is a smallish gull. It's smaller than the glaucous wing gull and the herring gulls that we find here in Kachemak Bay. And it has black wing tips, and they are solid black wing tips, look like they've been dipped in ink. They're overall white, a white color to the body, gray tops to the wings, and a yellow bill, and of course black legs, because it's named Black-legged Kittiwake.
Is there any way you can tell by listening to it?
Indeed you can. Their call is Kittiwake, 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 Kittiwake.
So Karl, we're heading out today to look at some birds on Kachemak Bay.
Right.
But on the way out the spit here, we saw some pretty fantastic thing happening. I noticed that there was a bunch of gulls kind of down on the mud flats, and you knew exactly what they were doing. Can you tell us?
Yes, they're kittiwakes, and this time of year they bring back they pick up mud from any muddy areas that they can find. Usually at low tide, although it's pretty high tide right now, they must have found a good spot over there. And they're going about a mile and a half toward the base of the spit, and they're picking up mud and they're bringing it back. That's what they glue their nests together with. They also pick up grass. They like a certain kind of grass, it seems like, and they'll bring that from off and around the harbor edge here. And if it's over by Gull Island, they'll go a couple miles to get good grass, so for their nests. And you can watch them. They'll go back and forth, just carrying stuff back and forth to their nesting sites.
And we saw that from where they were picking up the mud all the way out toward the dock this morning. There is a continual line of kittiwakes going back and forth.
Right.
I've never seen that before out here.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool.
So we're just heading out of the harbor right now. We're going to go across and see what we can see today.
Right.
So we're just coming up on Gull Island here. There's about 15 to 17,000 birds nesting on the island, and about 10,000 black-legged kittiwakes. I'd say 5,000 common murres or so, and then there's 5 other species. There's two different kinds of puffins, the tufted and the horned. There's pelagic cormorants. There are pigeon guillemots, and there are glaucous wing gulls.
Wow, that's a lot of different species.
Yeah, but the most numerous ones are the black-legged kittiwakes and the murres. And there's roughly twice as many black-legged kittiwakes.
So tell us about the kittiwakes.
Well, they come back to nest here every summer. They first appear around March. That's when we start seeing them. And then they kind of form pair bonds with other birds, and they kind of look for their nesting sites. And then by June, around June, they start carrying nesting materials and building their nests. So they'll have either 1 or 2 chicks, and they'll incubate them for roughly 27, 28 days, and then they feed their chicks for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, somewhere in there.
While they're still in the nest?
Yeah. And then they'll then the chicks will fledge, and they'll be about the size of the adults, and they will learn to feed themselves. And
So they just go down into the water.
Yeah.
But they can fly.
They can fly. Yeah, and then they'll be out to sea for maybe about 4 years before they actually start to breed, and they live for an average of about 20 years.
So most of the rest of the year they're out at sea?
Yeah, most of the year they're out at sea.
When they're out there, are they all together in a group? Or
Well,
are they scattered?
I think they're often in groups because they're in feeding areas, and so they find these large areas of where they'll feed on various things. So we're just going to come around the end of the island here, and let's see what we see on the other side here.
So do they look for nesting materials like we saw there on the Homer Spit where they would fly?
Yeah, they go to one specific spot every year, and it's just like a highway of birds going back and forth. You'll see them carrying their nesting material. You'll see them with mud, and there'll be thousands of birds in the air at a time, just going back and forth.
Well, it must be a really strong urge to build that nest.
Yeah, and they have to build it pretty well because they're on really steep faces of the cliff, so they've got to really glue it together well. And they'll also pick up things in the water as well.
So like seaweed and stuff.
Yeah, we'll
Seaweeds here that are doing it.
Right. So they pick up seaweed, and
oh yeah, look at these guys. They're getting there.
yeah. And then they'll often wash themselves off when they come down off the cliff. There's actually lice that they pick up when they're in the nesting areas. There's just all kinds of stuff, as you can imagine in that environment.
Well, it never smells very well.
No, and they'll come down and they'll wash themselves off and so on.
Do they have any predators over here?
Yes, they do. Eagles are probably their most the ones you see mostly, and as you can see, they're flying off the cliff right now. That's actually what they call a dread flight. So they'll fly off the cliff if the predator flies over like an eagle, and then they'll circle around and come back to their nests.
And how does that help protect them?
Well, there's so many in the air that the predator has a hard time picking one out.
Okay.
So that they all fly at once, the predator has to respond, and unless it has one singled out, it's going to be confused as to which one it can get.
I wonder how they signal to each other that they need to fly off. 'Cause they all seem to do it just all at once.
Yeah, I think they just know. They know. So we're just heading back to the Homer Spit, and we're going to take a look at a couple of kittiwake rookeries that have just started up in the last 20 years or so, and they're on man-made structures. They're on the Pioneer Dock and also the Deepwater Dock.
This is one of the few places in the world where they're nesting on man-made structures. Apparently in Norway they sometimes will nest in windowsills, in people's houses, but I don't know of any other place where they actually nest to this extent on a dock system.
So why did they start it here?
Well, it's hard to know. Hard to know why they started here. But perhaps Gull Island was kind of overcrowded, and so was 60-foot Rock. So they probably saw this and thought, hey, look what they built us. Nesting sites. So,
And the eagles can't get down in under there.
no, they're pretty protected. So it actually works out really well for them, I think.
So we're just about to head back into the harbor.
So Karl, did you see any good birds today?
Indeed I did. They're all good birds.